Okay, here is where I will start to show you my entire process of making sourdough bread. I have 350 grams of 98-degree water. I use that temperature of water because my kitchen is actually 66 degrees. And then I go ahead and add my active, bubbly, beautiful sourdough starter. And I'm using about 150 grams of this sourdough starter. Make sure that you use the King Arthur flour because that's the best flour that you could ever possibly buy. It's totally worth the money. And I'm adding 500 grams of King Arthur bread flour. After this, I do not add my salt. And don't ask me why. I read it somewhere and it's working out great and I don't want to mess it up. So I do not add my salt at this stage. I actually wait until the autolist is complete after 1 hour. And so after I add my 500 grams of bread flour, I mix it. Okay, here's where I get OCD because I need it to be 500 grams on the dot. See? After you do that, you can mix it all up. It's going to be a shaggy looking, ugly dough. Don't worry about that. Do not add the salt yet. And it's just going to be like that as long as there's no flour bits left. Cover it with a warm tea towel. Because my kitchen is so cold, I actually put it in the oven with the light on. And, if you have a warmer kitchen, you don't have to do this, but I've felt like my bulk fermentation process works a lot better when I actually put it that way. And I actually have to keep taking the temperature of my dough to make sure that it remains between 77 and 80. That's when I add the salt after the autolist is complete and I do my first stretch and fold. So here's what a stretch and fold looks like. I do this 4 times, a half an hour apart. And my bulk fermentation lasts about 4 hours, sometimes 4.5 hours, really depending on what it looks like. So for 2.5 hours, I am doing stretch and folds a half an hour apart. The first stretch and fold being directly after my autolist is complete and I have added my salt. And so you'll see me jiggle and wiggle and stretch and you just rotate the bowl and do this on all sides 4 times. A half an hour in between each fold. I think my dough was really stiff at this point and I was trying to get a couple good stretches in. So I was being really patient with it, letting it drop out of my hands before I folded it. Here's what it looks like after a few stretch and folds. It's becoming glossy and a little bit jiggly. You can really feel the dough coming together after a few of these. As you can see, it's way more stretchy now. That last stretch and fold, you could see how tight it was and how important it is to do this part. I struggle with making bread like this because I'm so busy and I'm never home for like an entire day without anything to do. And so I was really happy to be able to stay home for a full day and make this bread. This is the first time I've ever actually recorded my process. So thank you guys so much for watching. It's taken me about a year to master my sourdough, and it really all started coming together when I started writing things down so I could figure out where I went wrong because I didn't know whether or not it was the temperature of my dough or the temperature of my bulk fermentation or my sourdough like I just had no idea where I was going wrong. So like actually writing things down if you're trying to figure out your process is really, really important. Now you see my bulk fermentation is done. It was about 4.5 hours and the dough came out a little bit sticky, but don't fret. If your dough comes out pretty sticky after the bulk fermentation, do not add more flour. The best thing to do is just kind of get your hands wet and roll the dough a little bit and shape it. And, within a couple seconds, it is all starting to come together a little bit. The stickiness goes away. And you'll know your bulk fermentation is done when it jiggles like a water balloon. It springs back nicely when you poke it, and it has doubled in size. So all of those three things were true for me. So I knew my bulk fermentation was done. It was a little bit hard because when it's a sticky dough, it's hard to do the poke test. So you kind of have to rely on all the other tests. But as you can see, here's my shaping process. I'm basically just forming it into a dough ball, rolling it towards me and tucking the bottoms in and making sure that it's a nice uniform shape. Keep in mind from this point, into the time I was shaping my dough and the time I fed my starter was about 16 hours. So I fed my starter at 8 p.m. I woke up at like 7 a.m. and put my dough together. The auto list takes 1 hour. And so at 8 a.m. is when I started my stretch and folds. And then I did that for 2.5 hours. So I ended about 10:30 a.m. and then let it bulk ferment for another 2 hours. And so this was a noon the next day, 16 hours after I had fed my starter. So it's a long process, but I promise you it's worth it. Now you'll see me flouring my Banneton, because I'm getting ready to throw the dough in there, making sure that it's really floured on all sides, and it's going to go into the fridge for a cold proof. And I put my dough in there for 12 hours, and so that's what it looks like before it goes in for the cold proof. I cover it nicely and go to sleep. That's what it looks like after the cold proof. So the dough is a little stiff. You will obviously want to put it into a Banneton seam side up. And then when I take it out, it has this really cool round design because of the shape of my Banneton. And this is where I'm going to score it. Sometimes I do a 7-minute score, which means I put it in the oven for 7 minutes before I score it. This time I just decided to go for it. And in the meantime, right now I have been preheating my Dutch oven at 450 degrees for 45 minutes. And I actually set it for 425 because I was super tired. It was like 6 o'clock in the morning. So preheated Dutch oven, and my dough is going to get plopped inside of that bad boy. Plop. And this is where I'm going to throw it into the oven, 30 minutes covered. And keep in mind, your bake time and my bake time might be different because I'm at 9,000 feet elevation. And so I throw it in there for 30 minutes covered. And then after that, I take the lid off to do sometimes another 30 minutes uncovered. I know, call me crazy, but I cannot bring my bread up to temperature. It like gets stuck at 198 degrees and I do not know why. So I really just bake it for so long, probably longer than any recipe has ever said to do, but it's because I'm at 9,000 feet. So that's what it looks like when I uncover it. It has sprung up so nicely and beautifully, and it is ready. I actually had to go to work right after this, so I couldn't even stay home and cut it. And my anticipation was crazy at work. I wanted to come home on my lunch break and cut it, but it turns out so beautifully and so golden brown. Here's me taking the temp, and I cannot reach temperature. I decided to just go for it because I knew that it was going to bake a little bit in the Dutch oven while I got ready for work. So once I cut it, it was absolutely gorgeous. Yay! I hope you enjoyed.